It's the last business day of the week. Many thanks for joining us. At the beginning of the week, we talked about the rate hikes coming in. As on Wednesday, we saw the Feds release their rate hikes. Moderate, however, but still an aggressive move to fight inflation. Also, we have the Bank of England, the Eurozone, talking about rate hikes, and we'll be looking at that on the show today. Many thanks for joining me. Welcome to Business 360. I am Edidion Martin. But first, we'll start with the final design of the coin featuring Queen Elizabeth's profile that has been released by the Royal Australian Mint. Since ascending the throne in 1953, 6 portraits of the Queen have appeared on Australian coins, and next year, the late monarch will feature for the last time. The new design featuring the Queen was unveiled this week after her death in September at the age of 96 and will include her II. The memorial coin's notable addition will include the Queen's 70 years of reign and will read Elizabeth II, 1952 to 2022. Respects still go out to her. Moving away from that information, let's look at Tesla stocks. Elon Musk actually sells $3.6 billion of the shares from his electric maker. Multi-billion dollar Elon Musk has sold another 22 million shares worth $3.8 Tuesday and Wednesday this week, according to a filing with a U.S. financial regulator. It brings the total of Tesla stocks sold by Elon Musk over the past year. However, it remains Tesla's biggest shareholder with a 13.4% stake. Well, this is according to financial market data. Also, the World Bank has announced that Nigeria's growing inflation rate has cut the existing minimum wage by 55% and raised the number of the poor by 5 million in 2022. This was revealed at the corporation's launch of the Nigeria Development Update for December 2022 edition at the Country Economic Memorandum held in Abuja yesterday, 1,355 naira. The World Bank revelation came on the same day the National Bureau of Statistics announced that Nigeria's inflation in the month of November jumped to 21.47%, the highest peak in at least 17 years and 10th consecutive growth in 22 years. We'll be looking at that inflation rate much later on the show, but let's go ahead talking about the bank's new 200 naira, 500 naira, and 1,000 naira through commercial banks. The old naira notes were redesigned to reduce the currency in circulation and outside the banking system. Well, the governor of Central Bank, Godwin Emefiele, complained that of the 3.3 trillion naira circulation or currency in circulation inside Nigerian banks' vaults. To mop up this currency in circulation, which will help the financial regulator to control inflation, Godwin Emefiele announced in October that the redesigned naira will be released on December 15, which was yesterday, and of course, it was in circulation yesterday. Now, a lawsuit has been filed in the court seeking to prevent the Central Bank of Nigeria from effecting the cash withdrawal limit and has been adjourned to January 10, 2023, a day after the policy will become effective. Justice Sylvanus Origi of a High Court of the Federal Capital Territory in Abuja declined to grant the prayers of 10 applicants who filed the lawsuit on behalf of 20 million and its governor, Godwin Emefiele, to appear in court. Now let's look at what's going on around the world, talking about the global economy. We'll be starting with the UK Economic Index. Its interest rate has been risen to the highest level in 14 years. The Bank of England has raised UK interest rates to the highest level in 14 years as it battles to stem soaring prices. It increased them to 3.5% from 3% higher mortgage payments for some homeowners and those with loans at the time when many people are struggling with the cost of living. It would also benefit savers if banks pass on the higher rates to customers. The Bank of England has been attempting to calm rising prices since the end of last year. Now let's talk inflation, which has actually been the rise in the price of commodities, has been rising at its fastest rate for 40 years as the cost of food and energy. Central Bank's President Christine Lagarde explained the Governing Council's monetary policy decision, signaling further increases as she answered questions from journalists at the Governing Council press conference held yesterday. Let's hear from her.
Come later to the question and answers. I would ask the WebEx journalists to please turn on their cameras and their microphones so we can hear and see them. And now I would like to hand over to President Lagarde, please.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you. The Vice President and myself welcome you to our press conference points, and based on the substantial upward revision to the inflation outlook, we expect to raise them further. In particular, we judge that interest rates will still have to rise significantly at a steady pace to reach levels that are sufficiently restrictive to ensure a timely return of inflation to our 2% medium inflation by dampening demand, and will also guard against the risk of a persistent upward shift in inflation expectations. Our future policy rate decisions will continue to be data dependent.
Well, that's the Eurozone Central Bank governor talking about raising the interest rate by 50 basis points to fight inflation in the long run. Well, let's look at what's going on in Namibia's economy. The inflation rate actually urges down to a 4-month low. The annual inflation rate in Namibia ticked down to 7% in November from 2022 from 7.1% in the prior month, reaching the lowest level since July, as prices slowed slightly from recreation and culture. However, strong inflationary pressures continue to come from other CPI item bases. Consumer prices increased by 0.5%. This is the most in 4 months. Also, a 0.2% rise in the prior month. Now, we do hope we have the time to look at a chart representing inflation in Namibia quickly. We would like to have a chart representing inflation in Namibia. Looking at the chart representing inflation in Namibia, we can see that as at October 2022, we have it at 21.09%, but right now it's at 21.47%. This looks like what's going on in Nigeria rather. So let's move this chart out. Moving to the Nigerian Economic Index, inflation rate in Nigeria actually has climbed to a new 17-year peak of 2022 from 21.09 in the prior month and above market estimates of 21.15. It was the highest reading since September 2005, attributed to food supply disruptions, import cost hikes due to currency depreciation, and a rise in production cost. Main upward pressure continued to come from climate change and the devastating impact of severe flooding on farmlands this year, coupled with the ongoing Russian-Ukraine war, remained the key factors weighing on the country's agricultural sector. Now let's see a chart representing Nigeria's inflation. As we can see a very steady climb, almost at par till March at 15.92%. And with the ongoing war, the Ukraine war, spiked all up to 21.47%. All of the factors I had mentioned above, the climate change, starting with the metal market. We'll be looking at palladium. I know it's the first time you are hearing about palladium on the show. However, palladium is a soft silver-white metal used mostly in the production of catalytic converters in petrol cars, electronics, dentistry, medicine, hydrogen purification, chemical application, groundwater treatment, and jewelry outputs, followed by United States and Canada and Zimbabwe. Palladium's price fell to $1,790 in mid-December. This is the lowest in 1 year, as hawkish monetary policy from major central banks reduced by 50 basis points and projected borrowing costs to stay higher than expected for a longer period as well. In turn, the European Central Bank with already. Besides reducing demand for bullion assets, higher rates hampered growth projections for automobiles, pressuring prices for inputs in catalytic converters. Now, let's look at what's going on in the metal markets. We've already talked about palladium. However, within the week, we have seen gold depreciate in the metal market. So looking at the metal market this morning, we see gold exchanging at $1,775 per commodity that's not depreciating in the market this morning. A very few. We have iron ore, we see lithium 0%, 0 point, we see copper at 0.0%, we see titanium at 0.0%. Those are the commodities that are really depreciating. Slight, how you may say slight, 3 points, 13 points, slight, but it's a depreciation in the metal market all the same. At the beginning of the week, it was a total depreciation, but right now, well, we've seen exchanges, we've seen buy and sell. WTI talking about the Brent crude. We can see a bloodbath in the energy market this morning from Brent crude, from WTI exchanging at 74.68 US dollars a barrel, Brent crude at 79 US dollars per barrel. In fact, all the commodities in the energy markets are depreciating this morning. At the beginning of the week, it wasn't this bad, it was only fair. We would have loved to look at the agricultural markets and the livestock markets. Yes, talking about the foods and the major CPI exchange rates and all of that. But let's move to the economy, the foreign exchange. Talking about South African's currency. The South African rand was trading lower around 17.5 against the US dollar, holding close to its lowest level in over a month, as the dollar gained ground on expectations that rising rates will remain elevated for longer. Meanwhile, the South African Reserve Bank lifted the repo rate by another 75 basis points in November, marking the 6th consecutive hike in a year. It is poised to prolong its most in its forecast horizon. The annual inflation rate in South Africa eased slightly to 7.4% in November, down from 7.6% in October, although persistently above the upper limit of the central bank's target. Without looking at what's going on in the Nigerian stock market, we had gains in chemical and allied products. The Adrover, almost amongst others, handed some investors in the Nigerian capital market 133.43 billion naira, leading to the market cap trading to 26.81 billion naira from 26.68 billion naira. The all share index gained 244.98 basis points to rise from 48,000 points to 49,233.02 points. Investors sealed 2,756 deals after trading 222.77 million shares worth 2.12 billion naira. CAP led the gainers list with 1 naira 60 kobo, topped the losers table after shedding 10% to drop from 0 naira 60 kobo to 0 naira 54 kobo per share. Sterling Bank led the day's trading with 153.28 million shares, valued at 205.43 million naira. Well, that's what we have for you on Business 360. Thanks for joining me. I am Edidio Martin. Stay tuned. Sport Central is up next.